Nerds used to have to wait and consume in dribs and drabs and then get together with other nerds physically to talk about it. That's where Star Trek convention started. People who loved the show realized other people loved the show, and the best way to do it was to get everybody in a room.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our brand new channel, rebranded Talk Nerdy to Me. You'll see me, the human ramp, and you will see another familiar face, Camera Chris. And new joining us, we have Marcus. Marcus, introduce yourself. Tell us about yourself.
I'm Marcus, AV technician, been a nerd and a collector of all things nerdy longer than Jordan's been alive.
Very true.
And I also have a podcast with a comic collector as well as a nifty, nerdy place in Ridgeway called the Frugal Dutchman. We have a podcast called At the Counter.
Very cool. Where is that?
Ridgeway, Ontario is in Fort Erie, the greater Fort Erie. So go to Niagara Falls and go a little further south, and that's where you hit us.
Amazing. Amazing. So with that, we can jump right into our topic. We lost Chris for a bit, but I'm sure he'll be back. Video killed the tradable star. Can comics turn around? So somebody who is close to people at a comic shop, do they find what is keeping their business going right now?
Old people.
Old people.
Yeah. It's old nerds who are still collecting and still doing stuff. New is harder. Kids aren't, from what I can see anyways, kids don't populate like the old nerds do into the comic book stores. The new titles, there's so many things that they're throwing against the wall to see if anything sticks, and not a lot of it is. Storytelling is still great, art is still great, but kids want bigger, faster. They don't have the attention span to read, even if it is just comic books.
That's very interesting. We were talking about this last week. I don't know if we ever not last week, but last time. But I don't know if we are live, by the way. That's pretty cool. Apparently we have 3 viewers.
Ooh,
cool.
Hello.
Yeah, on face. Hello, 3 viewers. Say hi in the chats. I believe this will allow us to. We can put up a chat thing here. Cool. We're just testing this out. So last time we were talking about how the stories weren't as good as before. You were saying we need faster punch. But the last time, what's up, Denny? The last big title I read would have been Avengers versus X-Men. And that was piggybacking off of House of M, because the Phoenix Force was coming back at that point. And I dove off of it. Not dove, but just died off of it because it became too hard to follow and convoluted. You know, when you're trying to collect one big cohesive story, and you have to go from this issue to this issue, this issue to this issue, and you can't find what they're referencing in the main story. It's very hard to keep interest.
Yeah, because in the old days when they used to do footnoted references, like, find out what happened to so-and-so, basing it on what was happening in that issue or that series, they used to footnote it and throw you over to, Hulk issue number whatever. And you would go there and you go, oh, that's funny how they tied that in. And it was within reason. Now it's, or it increased, and I don't know about now because obviously I'm not collecting now.
Yeah, me either.
But it got to a point where it just blew out of proportion. Civil War did it. And of course, Civil War was massive, so they had to encompass all of that stuff and all of the characters. So everyone that had a title of their own during that time was brought in via footnote and tied into the bigger story. And then they had their side stories, maybe how they got involved, what their position in the which side did you take argument. So it was good, but it was impossible, I found, to get your hands on every issue that was referenced. It was too much.
Yeah, they've had a history of doing that though. Back during Millennium, back during Secret Wars, back during Civil War. Do you guys know the Millennium timeline?
Mm-hmm.
Millennium was a way to screw with everybody in the entire. It was basically DC's version of a giant what if.
Yeah.
This one guy called Wave Rider was trying to find the superhero that would go bad and become the crazy Superman from Injustice. They did that years and years and years before Injustice, and he became Monarch, but nobody knew which hero went bad. So this guy came back in time and ran around touching superheroes and then would see their potential future. And so they would have an issue, and then they'd have the 10 or 15, 20 issues of that month that was directly after that. And he would look through a bunch of people, and then the next part of the story would happen. And so you had to collect 23, 24, 25 comics just to get the whole story.
Yeah.
Which I did, because that's what I did back then. But I mean, the story was great. It was a bit of a letdown on the ending, but there were some great what ifs that I had. The Flash what ifs were amazing. But Chris is right. They used to do a footnote in Marvel specifically when it would just say, Incredible Hulk issue number 27, True Believers, and it was Stan.
Yeah, and then they got cutesy with it, where they would say, to see what happens, go to this issue, and then they would throw in like Truthful Stan, and they would make up little adjectives for each of the contributors, like whoever the artist was, or the editor, or the writer, or whomever on Marvel staff was contributing. They would put the footnote, and then they would cutesy it up. But yeah, and then it just got to be too much.
Yeah, the one thing I was going to say that I will take back slightly, the kids are still all into graphic novels. They love graphic novels.
Like after the fact.
Well, not even after fact, just even ones that are strictly put out as graphic novels.
Okay, yeah.
They love them.
Well, yeah, and that's why
there's no waiting.
And that's why a lot of the Japanese stuff is taking over, because they're putting it out that way to begin with.
I was going to say the next point would be manga is kind of where the kids have gone now, right? Like fresh characters, fresh stories. I mean, have our heroes lost their luster because we've seen them do almost everything? And when you were saying they're into the graphic novels, I mean, I loved this book. I've always been a graphic novels person rather than a trade. And it's not because I didn't like waiting. It's just, I mean, I guess so. But when you're reading a graphic novel, you're almost waiting longer rather than the trade, right? But even as we go into Netflix, people just want to binge, right? They're like, oh, I just finished season 17 and I started yesterday of House, whatever, But it's been proven that the more you binge and the faster you read the content or watch the content, you don't retain it, and it's better to slow it down and marinate what you just read and anticipate. I enjoyed when Disney went back to the model of regardless of the content that they were putting out for some of their shows, their week to week service, because I got that anticipation and the show's gonna start streaming here, and I enjoyed, getting excited, about that show week to week. So trades are fun. I don't know if it's necessarily the kids. I don't want to put it on the kids' short attention spans. I would like to challenge the creative process and
no. I think I think it's bigger than just the comic book industry as a whole, because what it is, from my perception, we are inundated with a massive amount of content, for lack of a better word. We, it's been a long time, and the superhero movie blow up of the past 15 years changed everything. But I think it was a train that was already reaching the station. And what it is with the advent of digital transmissions and digital cable and streaming, and then TiVo came along, and then DVRs, which is just TiVo without the brand. And your ways to record shows became easier, but then when it became the possibility of pausing live TV, for instance, or skipping commercials and all this kind of stuff, and then being able to just out and out stream content. So to be able to go out and grab what the show you want to watch without having to wait for a showtime, and release the release of series that you didn't have to wait for the next episode. That's a huge game changer in everything. So then binge watching became a term, and now it's in everybody. It's in the common parlance. It's in the lexicon of today's society. Like you don't have to explain what binge watching is to most people, even boomers and old people and whatever. So the point I'm trying to make is we have more content just coming out on a daily basis from every medium, that there's no possible way that an individual can keep up and consume even all that they want to consume. We're watching things at double time so that we can get through it faster and that we can consume more of it. But that still doesn't let you, and of course that when you're talking about actual narrative storytelling, that ruins the actual artistry and the flavor that it was built with. YouTube, I could make arguments that it's not the same thing. So yeah, go ahead and double speed or triple speed, whatever you're capable of. But what you end up with is gone now, and I don't think it'll ever return, and that's part of our discussion here today, is what they used to call water cooler talk.
Yeah, I was going to go there.
And other than, Endgame was really the end game for mass consumption of a singular title, where everybody you knew had seen that. There used to be, like Seinfeld, the next morning people would be like, I can't spare a square, and everyone knew what you were talking about.
Yep.
And you could make these pop culture referential jokes based on last night's episode. Thursday night must-see TV, which became a brand unto itself. The phrase became the brand, and all the other brands that were umbrellaed underneath it. And those things aren't there anymore. And even if you go back and consume that content, you're not consuming it in that same manner. So therefore, you're not getting the same reaction. So it doesn't sustain within each of the individual viewers, but you're not getting the same overall pop culture effect. And I was thinking about it a couple of weeks ago, which is why this topic is great, is it used to be interesting to hear other people's takes on, even if it's just mundane pop culture stuff, like an episode of a sitcom. It was fun to sit and dissect certain things of what you liked about it and what you didn't like about it. But now everyone is consuming so much stuff that you're not intersecting. So you try to have a conversation with someone about one of these things, and they just don't really line up. There's been a few, like that Squid Game thing came along, and I didn't watch it, but like everybody else seemed to have. So there have been a few keystone moments of consumption, but overall there's just so much that you can't you can't keep track of it all.
I'm pretty sure the last thing that had the water cooler effect was Game of Thrones, because that was still episodic.
Fair enough. Yep.
Everybody and their brother jumped on it. I can honestly say I've never watched a single one. I didn't like the books when I read them, so I didn't.
Well,
Why move
the
forward?
shows were abysmally worse than the
Yes,
books.
yeah, it's like Wheel of Time. I have no desire to see that ever, because the books were so abysmally boring. But that's my own opinion, and I'm sure we're going to get hate for that from people who love it. But If it takes 1,000 pages to go through a week of time, you're not writing properly. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. That's what I was going to agree with the water cooler thing. Nerds used to have to wait and consume in dribs and drabs and then get together with other nerds physically to talk about it. That's where Star Trek convention started. People who loved the show realized other people loved the show, and the best way to do it was to get everybody in a room. And that's harder than you think it is. It's I used to run them in Toronto. I was involved in running Polaris and Toronto Trek and Nat Astra and all these conventions out there. I'd been doing it for 30 years. It's not as easy as you think. And it used to be literally what we're doing here in a room, in the green room, not the green room, in the con suite is what we used to call it. And you'd get the biggest nerds, like people with zero social skills, who would sit there and passionately get to talk to people and argue and talk about what each little bit of thing means. Like you get the last series of Star Trek Next Generation, or the last year. Wow. Season. There we go. My brain no worky. Last season of that just happened, you would sit and you would dissect every little bit of it. And we used to not have any such thing as a rerun. Like Chris and I are somewhere around the same age, so we both remember that you
And
watched
we won't say what that
or it
age
was
is.
gone. No, but you watched it and it was gone. You never saw it again until maybe the summertime. We're not that old, but the concept of reruns was not a thing. Eat it, child. Anyways, the concept of reruns was not a thing. You watched it when it happened, or you never saw it again. And then with the advent of more and more television stations who needed more content, then they would start rerunning old stuff. What was it? TNT started strictly as a rerun station. And science fiction was so thin of a slice that anything you could get, you dove on.
Right, and it was so thin that you were able to watch old 1960s episodes of like Twilight Zone and what was the other one that was the Twilight Zone similar?
Oh, the Outer Limits?
Outer Limits,
Canadian
yeah.
one? Yeah.
Yeah. And those were around, and it's similar to what I was saying is and that's my point, is there used to be such a, I don't want to say lack of content, but there used to be so much less content that you were able to consume it all, to the point where, yeah, you could recite, as a kid growing up in the 80s and 90s, you could recite every episode of the Flintstones, because every day when you came home for lunch or after school, you saw, and there wasn't much to choose from on daytime television.
Yep.
So you were up on, you knew even though the Brady Bunch predates me, but I had seen every Brady Bunch episode 5 or 6 times. And you don't get that anymore. Like, the rewatch value of things is not what it was either. Like, I mean, I enjoy going back. I've recently gone back and watched the entire run of The Sopranos. I'm currently rewatching Boardwalk Empire. And there are certain things that I will revisit, and I like doing that, always have. But I don't see that in today's generation, the younger generation. But I like it in the sense of, like, I can't even tell you how many times I've watched the series Deadwood. It's one of my all-time favorites. I think it's unbelievably underrated. It is so great. Unfortunate that it got canceled when it did, but I've watched that so many times. I can, it's like I used to be in junior high and high school with Star Wars and reciting every single line of the episodes. And, you could look at that and go, well, what value are you getting out of that? But it's almost like, and God, this is such a latchkey kid comment, it's almost like visiting an old friend.
I was going to say comfort food.
Yeah, that's another good way of putting it.
Yeah, and the same with comics, the same with television shows, and even superhero movies. back in our day, and I hate sounding this old, but back in our day, you got what you got and you enjoyed it. Like the crappy Captain America and Spider-Man movies from the 70s, we didn't care. They were something.
Right.
There was something we had. We could latch onto it. That's why things like even up to and including Daredevil, which is a horrible movie, not the series. The Ben Affleck one. I still love it. I still love Green Lantern because it was something. But now, instead of getting that one cracker every couple of years, few years to time frame, whenever you could get it, now we're getting a buffet that's literally being shoved down our throats. There's not enough time to eat everything.
Right.
So for us, when we used to have, this, like the Batman movie came out, like this is incredible. There's actually Batman on the screen. It's not campy and silly. This is it's campy, but it's not silly.
So here's the other side of it, because I've considered the Batman movie, the Tim Burton Batman movie, and what followed it in that run as a point, almost a counterpoint to what we're talking about, is there was often things that were successful due to a lack of content that shouldn't have been successful had there been better competition. And the Tim Burton Batman movies, and I will go to my grave saying this, sucked balls. And they were only successful because we lacked anything similar at the time.
I'm going to argue with you just a hair. The second Batman Tim Burton sucked balls. The first one was okay.
He couldn't even move his neck.
Well, that's a limitation of the time frame and the materials. Just like
it is.
If you look at the 1950s Superman, it looked like crap because he couldn't fly. When the guy who invented the flying rig lives around the corner from me. He's got the rig in his basement. Like, it's crazy. But once they invented that technology leap let people believe that people could fly, which was a leap forward.
Mm-hmm.
And wire work became a big deal.
But where I disagree with that analogy is those types of things, or having, if you saw a string here or there or whatever that they weren't able to remove, are acceptable. What I find unacceptable is the amount of money and effort that they clearly put into that project, and you still can't make his neck move because you went too rigid on a cowl. We're not talking about technology that wasn't available. We're talking about design that was overlooked for whatever purpose. But my bigger issue with those is, the Joker's not a fat old man, and they pick a fat old man that everyone was like, oh my God, but Jack Nicholson was great as the Joker. No, he wasn't. Shut the fuck up. All he did was laugh a bit and act off the cuff.
Yeah.
And obviously it wasn't off the cuff because it was scripted, but you know what I mean. But what I find worse about it is anyone who was a Batman fan leading up to that can tell that Tim Burton was out of his element, if he ever even had one, because he's a one-trick pony. He made a film in college, stop motion film in college, and that's his watermark, his brand, going forward. And he just keeps trying to recapture that lightning in a bottle. But years later, Tim Burton himself in an interview said, I think anybody that knows me knows I've never even read a comic book. And myself and other comic book collecting fans that I hung out with, we were like, thank you for finally admitting what we've been yelling about all this time.
Yeah, but they've taken that whole concept of never reading a comic book and they've applied it to the entire MCU right now.
It's true.
Everything Disney
currently, yes.
Yeah, everything Disney is pumping out in the last 2 years, the writers have been told, do not read the source material.
Yeah,
which makes absolutely
that famous
no
compilation
sense.
That's going around right now of all of the different people in charge, and they're going, no, we were told not to. We were warned not to.
Which makes no sense if you have that much source material.
No, would you put a race car driver who's never driven a car into a race car for the first time and go, don't do any research. We know you've never driven before. The pedal on the right makes it go.
Yeah. Here's what the car looks like. Figure it out.
Right.
It's awful.
Which everybody's voting with their wallets. Their wallets. I almost said Woolard because, hey, what's up, Woolard? He just popped into the chat. everybody's voting with their wallets. And Marvel is losing money rapidly. And not only did, going back to the first point, video killed the tradable star because, people, just like the radio, people want to see it visual and see Hulk versus Iron Man. Like that Hulkbuster scene and versus the Hulk, fantastic to see on screen. I know the outcome's not always great because Marvel hates on the Hulk. But we got to see it and it was amazing. And now don't read the source material is what they're being told. And even the hardcore die-hard fans that will watch shit after shit just because they still want to believe that there's going to be a turnaround here are turning it off.
You're looking for a diamond in amongst a pile of shit. There's got to be something that is good. But the only problem with that is there's so much crap to wade through to find the one little scene that does it. It's almost not worth it. Like Star Wars is doing the same thing. The only one who's not doing it recently, and I hate to say it, is Star Trek. Star Trek has been putting out just gold in the last couple of years. Between Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks, it has been just printing money every single episode. But Marvel has now gone to the place that DC has been for so long. DC cannot lose on their animated series. On their animated movies are all gold. They can't print a phony $1 bill on their movies because they're not letting the writers of the comics or the animated work on the main series, which makes no sense. And somehow Marvel said, hey, losing all that money over there, that looks like a good model. Let's follow that, which makes no sense because they were doing great writing. And then all of a sudden it just puffed.
They were, and they even, because to put the MCU back in its former glory is I don't know if it can be done. I don't know if you can get to Endgame again. Obviously, it is through the X-Men or Doctor Doom, a character we have not seen yet.
Or just rebooting and recasting.
Yeah, I mean, you could do that, but it's like...
The problem is everybody they cast for the beginning of the MCU could not have been better cast. With a couple of exceptions, Robert Downey Jr. was made to play that role.
Well, yeah. How do you recast RDJ at this point, right? Everyone's just going to... I mean, we've done it, right? We've seen Batman rebooted 3 times and Spider-Man rebooted 3 times. This will be a future topic. Let's not go down that hole.
But the point is, you can't just recast and start again. You've already put too much into it.
Yes.
Like doing 1, 2, 3 movies and stopping for 4 or 5 years and then trying again is different than trying to reboot an entire
whole universe.
Now, they tried real hard with the Flash movie, which was absolute garbage. But they absolutely tried to resurrect the DCU and failed. Partially because of Ezra Miller, partially because of poor writing.
Yeah, and, Michael Keaton looking like he just came out of the Jumanji game. Like, that was... I did not understand that choice, but that was a thing. It happened.
It was nice to see him back in the cowl, though.
It was great to see him back in the cowl. But Marvel had a chance. The world even said after Endgame, stop. The whole world is going to stop. You guys can recalibrate for the next 3 years, and you could have opened up phase 4 with Spider-Man and you started with the mutants right then and there. Now, I don't know if the contracts were allowed at that point in time, so I could be wrong on my timing, but there was no going forward when you take out your 3 biggest MCU stars, which was Captain America, Iron Man, and the Hulk. Yes, Hulk is still around.
Well, but I mean, in their defense, the best thing they ever could have possibly done was make the Hulk look more like Mark Ruffalo and have him have him merge off screen.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What, complete your arc off screen?
Yeah,
Yeah.
best possible scenario. Oh, and then have him in a suit of armor instead of the Raging Hulk for the biggest battle
In comic book history,
in
Yeah.
comic book movie history.
if not movie history, like, I mean, because of the weight, you can have a lot of people in a battle, but the amount of characters that are in a battle,
You see what Woolrich just put?
aging actors, you vote for AI. I mean, sure. I mean, that is a thing too, right? Contracts and stuff, right? And
Well,
that
but
hurts.
here's another point is the age of the movie star, the actual bona fide movie star, not just celebrities, not just people that you know their names, but the actual movie stars that when they're headlining a movie, they put asses in seats. That age as well, because of all this, or because of a combination of a bunch of different things, is gone. Which I'm not sad to see it go. I think idol worship is silly. I personally appreciate and praise ideas more than I do a person, because ideas come and go, and therefore, you can get a celebrated status based on your success of an idea and bringing it to fruition. But you're not going to necessarily be the hero of, 20 movies based on that one idea, which is where we grew up. People, you've got Quentin Tarantino who punches out the same goddamn movie over and over again with different window dressing. Same thing with, and don't even get me started, I will fight anybody and I will bring facts and, as the kids say, receipts. But Martin Scorsese is the worst director to ever work in Hollywood. He is a one-trick show pony. You start off with narration, you enter a doo-wop song, and then here comes the title character. And the title character is typically the one narrating it. Like, it is so formulaic. Everything he does is unbelievably piss poor, but people seem to think that he is a god amongst men, and I don't get it.
But it works, doesn't it?
It sells. So again, I don't get the success of the Fast and Furious franchise or the Transformers thing. And this is the thing is,
yeah,
I go back to the Tim Burton Batman. People want a certain thing, and there is obviously generalities for a reason, and there are people that like a general sort of form of entertainment. And the common response that I would hear when I would ask people, why the hell would you pay to go and see those Transformers movies, or, enter the latest whatever Michael Bay or Jerry Bruckheimer movie, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Bruckheimer's been responsible for a couple of things that I've liked, but overall, if Bruckheimer's name is attached to it, you know that shit's going to blow up, and it's going to go 2.5 hours blowing shit up constantly, and people constantly on the run, and no stopping of a musical background track throughout the entire thing. You watch a Jerry Bruckheimer movie, count how long a 2.5 hour Bruckheimer movie goes without a soundtrack.
Yeah, it's in the moments.
Yeah, you won't reach 2 hands of seconds.
You're saying, like, instead of an original score for the movie,
I don't care what the score is. It's
he's bringing in
the fact
already
that
done
you
music.
constantly have to have music constantly throughout. But then you watch a show like Deadwood or a show like The Sopranos, and The Sopranos ended up working music into it. But you go back and watch, they didn't rely on music to create the feeling of a scene or an episode, and nor did Deadwood. And there are a lot of them now that you can look to, and music should be used in a visual medium to convey what the theme of that scene is, what the emotion and the feeling of that theme or of that scene is. It should not just be ever present. And the Bruckheimer formula is constantly on the run, constantly with background music that intensifies. That's the only difference, is the intensity level of the presence of the music and shit blowing up and guns going off.
Well, the thing for me is music, as a musician and someone who does study film scores and that kind of thing. There's a great podcast I listen to that literally deep dives like into chord progressions and stuff like that. I'll have to look it up because it's wonderful. Music is supposed to heighten the emotion, not create the emotion. Bruckheimer is always, hey, there's our thing that's happening, but the acting isn't really telling you what is going on. So let's use the music to do so. Music can change what the scene is depending on what you put in there. I mean, there's a bunch of people doing the end game when people show up, and everybody
The
shows
portal?
up,
Right.
the portal
Portals.
scene, and they'll change the music to like other things, and it completely changes how you see that scene. I think the best example of that is Jaws. Steven Spielberg shot Jaws, and he said, "This is the movie that I'm creating, and this is what I want." And John Williams looked at the trades and went, "That's not the movie he's making." And he put in his music, which was completely 180 from what Spielberg wanted. And Spielberg watched the movie with that music and went, "Oh, I made a different movie than I thought I made," because the music conveyed a different thing. And music can be used really powerfully to enhance and trick and make some really interesting choices. But if your music is the only thing causing or letting you know what emotion you should be feeling, you're not doing it right.
And I 100% agree, and which is my overall arcing point of bringing this up. But I will put an example forth. I call it the lightsaber debacle. And what I mean by this is we went from 1983, when Return of the Jedi came out, and as a kid who lived through the 80s and 90s and collected a ton of whatever I could get my hands on, it was, I wouldn't say scarce, but after the run of the movies in theaters, it's not like you could go out and just buy Star Wars merchandise. And you couldn't just go out and buy even a Star Wars t-shirt. Like, things were not as readily available and not as overly mass produced as they are today. And good or bad, there were things that as kids of that age and that generation, we would have loved to have had. You hung on to that Star Wars lunchbox even after you were of lunchbox carrying age, but you still had it and you used it for other things, putting pencil crayons in, putting whatever, some of your figures. But you held on to it because you knew you couldn't get it again. And the plastic thermos it came with had long since broken, but you had that lunchbox. And then flash forward to the turn of the century, and they re-release the original 3 movies in anticipation of the prequels coming out. So then the prequels come out, and everyone's clamoring for it, and we kidded ourselves into believing that The Phantom Menace was good, to the point where I saw it 4 times in theaters in the first 24 hours that it was out. And yes. And I went with different people, and I brought my dad at 10 a.m. the next morning. I went at midnight the night that it came out. I went again at 2 a.m. or 2:30, whatever it was, by myself. And then I brought my dad at 10 a.m. And then I brought a bunch of high school friends at like whatever the next showing was. Or maybe that's flipped. Maybe it was them at 10 a.m. and then my dad later on. And I convinced myself that this was a good movie, even though I was bored during the insane amount of delegation and bureaucratic bullshit scenes in the Imperial Senate, or soon to be Imperial Senate, whatever the fuck. But okay, my point is, then along comes the second one, and then the third one, and we were clamoring for these movies to come out, and we were hoping for it building to a bigger and better thing. And it didn't. Spoiler, it didn't. In the Attack of the Clones, no clones actually attacked anybody. And
That's a good point.
Well, that brings up that whole thing that all the movies have the wrong titles.
yeah, well, I know,
You
it's
heard that
great.
one?
Yep.
I love that thing.
That made
Yeah,
me
it's-
laugh a lot. I'm like, that makes a shocking amount of sense.
It's fantastic.
That's disturbing, actually. But
Yeah. So my ultimate point is, I went because of what my life was at the time. I used to work a night job, 12-hour night shift, and then I would go home, sleep for a few hours, and then I'd, spend the afternoon doing whatever I wanted to do before I had to be back at work in the evening. And I went and saw the Revenge of the Sith. Oh, I just spilled the beans on one of my favorite podcasts. I went and saw Revenge of the Sith on my own, opening day afternoon, because that was my thing. And so for years, again, my point, clamoring as a teenager, I would have loved to have had a toy lightsaber. Couldn't get one. And by the time Revenge of the Sith came out, and that movie itself had more lightsaber than all of the previous movies combined. It was every opportunity to bust out a lightsaber, and different colors and new colors that we had never seen before. Oh, look at that. Samuel L. Jackson has a purple lightsaber. Oh, great.
I still love that story of why there's a purple lightsaber. Everybody knows that one, right?
Yep.
He chose it, didn't he?
He chose it because nobody else had a purple lightsaber. So when in a giant fight scene, he could go, "Oh, there I am."
Yep.
He full out told that in an interview. He's like, "Yep, that's the only reason it's there."
So I left that movie theater that afternoon. I whipped out my Motorola flip phone and I called my girlfriend at work, and I reamed about George Lucas and lightsabers. And I just shouted at the top of my lungs. And if I never see another lightsaber again, it'll be too soon. And then I went to pick her up from work because that geographically was how things worked. I was at the theater near where she worked, and I'd pick her up and we'd go home. And I showed
I
up.
can see this coming.
I had gone to, they don't exist anymore. I had gone to Future Shop, an electronics store in Canada, and they had lightsabers for $150. And they were interactive. When you turn them on, it actually glowed up to extend, and they made clashing sounds. It's sitting right up there, right up on the top of my shelf. And I showed up after 20 minutes of yelling like she had something to do with it over the phone to my girlfriend. And I showed up and I showed it to her, and she was like, "After all your pitching." And I said, "I know, but the kid in me still wanted one."
My intention was to collect as many as I could and put them on a gun rack on the wall.
I know a guy. He's got like 1,000 of them on his wall. It's crazy.
That's crazy.
Then I had a family and children and no money to do things like that. But
Right, yeah,
eventually that'll happen, I'm sure, because that's how nerdy
Friends
I
of
am.
mine just went to Disney, and they got into
The Builder?
the Builder, the whole production, choose the gem, and it's just the Jedi.
It's such a racket.
It is.
It's just a
What was it?
moneymaker.
$200 or
Oh,
something.
minimum, and that's U.S. And if
That's
you're
US,
going
yeah.
in from Canada, you need to factor in that horrible exchange rate.
Well, that's like $300.
Yeah,
It's crazy, and I think it's even more expensive. I'd look it up, but I think it's even more expensive than 200 U.S.
And what a shock their kid picked a red crystal, eh?
not a shock at all. Not a
When they
shock.
first put them out, you had a random crystal, and 1 in 100 or something was a red kyber crystal. And I knew people who bought like 5, 6, 7 of these things at like $25 a piece, trying to find a red one. And they got like, I got 3 greens and a blue and this, that, and other. And sometimes they'd get one, sometimes they wouldn't. But the thing about the red crystal originally was it had no color to it at all until you saw on light through it. Then it went black and red. like the crystal darkened and it went red. So it was very cool. Now it's kind of just like, oh, I want to be a bad guy. Give me a red crystal. You know, it seems kind of silly.
Everybody wants to be the bad guy.
Well, traditionally, the bad guys are more interesting, right?
They have more fun.
Well, they always do. Bad guys are able to push the envelope for our heroes to make them better, and they do have more fun. That's exactly what it is, right? Like the hero doesn't want to do this, right?
Yeah, bad
guys do. Hero does it because they have to do it.
This might be a bit of a tangent, and I know it is, but
you're fine.
I'm loving this trend right now where the bad guy maybe isn't wrong, especially in the Kingsman. Like in the first Kingsman, speaking of Samuel L. Jackson, he had the way he went about trying to solve the problem was wrong, but he was trying to solve a problem. He wasn't a traditional, I'm an evil bad guy going to take over the world. He's like, I think the world's going to die. I have to do something. Now, why he decided to keep the useless top members of society that don't do anything, like that's like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right? They left and they took all the rich people away and they died from a phone, from a virus on a phone because they didn't have the phone cleaners anymore. But like why you would take the rich people and leave the people who do the actual work is beyond me. But he was trying to do something. And even the second one, Poppy just wants to be a business person. So she sells drugs. She'll pay taxes. She does her thing. She just wants to do that. But to do that, she holds the entire world hostage. So how they go about solving the problem is what makes them the bad guy. But their motivations are never bad guy motivations. You know, like traditionally, that's what makes that series so interesting. That and the incredible way they shoot the violence.
A few weeks ago, we actually discussed Xavier and Magneto, and who is actually morally has the high ground and whatnot. And we're always told that it's Xavier, but really, like Magneto speaks truth and doesn't hide his motivations and doesn't hide what he's going to do.
And let's be fair, he likes to kill Nazis too, so that's always a bonus.
Well, that's a big bonus, right? That's something else actually that's going to pop in my head now. So when Magneto gets introduced into the MCU, he would have been about 10 during World War II, which will make him 100 years old. Who knows when he's going to show up, right? They're talking about Doom before Magneto, which take your time, I guess. Just do it, right? But so are we just going to say, or are they just going to say, well, he's a mutant, so he ages slower. So every mutant now is just going to age slower?
Well, they always
do. You want the real answer?
I would love the real answer.
The real answer is they will gender and race swap Magneto, and they will appear as an oppressed, underpaid, and that will be the reason for his hatred, their hatred.
Who are you going to cast as Magneto?
A Disney ginger.
There are no more gingers in Disney.
That's what I'm saying. That's what they call it. A Disney ginger is a black person who's replaced a redheaded person because they're trying to eliminate redheads from the media.
Yeah,
that's my absolute. Somebody hates redheads, so they've taken upon themselves to destroy any idea of redheads in the media. Period. Look at the list; it's crazy.
Oh, it's insane.
No. As a redhead, as a ginger, the ginger ninja, I call myself.
We got another buddy who calls him that too.
I'm thinking Elliot Page for Magneto would be really good.
You mean Ferris Bueller with AIDS?
Wow, that is amazing. That is the best description I've heard all day. We're so getting canceled.
That's going in a short. That's going in a short for sure.
The clip, yeah.
That's the clip.
Oh,
Watch
man.
our new show, Elliot Page, Ferris Bueller with AIDS.
Wow.
Oh, that's funny.
No, you're right. They will come up with some weird nonsense. Oh, crying out loud.
Somebody's ringing.
No, it's my kid. He'll call about 7 or 8 more times. So don't worry about it. I'll try and get rid of it so that it doesn't happen. Sorry about that.
Okay, you're fine.
Yeah, they'll come up with some. You're absolutely right. They may not gender swap, but they will come up with some other reason to make them oppressed. Because you're right, World War II is too far away now. Trapped in the Vietnam War, maybe with the atrocities of POW for 20 years until they figured out he could do things and got his way out, or whatever they're going to come up with. That's what's going to happen, because you're right. World War II is too far away.
Yeah.
And let's face it, we haven't had a good Holocaust in a while, so there's nothing new to get in on, right?
Yeah, the good ones have all been taken.
Yeah.
I mean, from the river to the sea.
Right?
Is that too current?
He'll show up as a Palestinian woman.
Yeah.
And his mind blocking helmet will be a hijab.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
Tinfoil hijab.
I'm getting a job with Disney.
Yeah.
That's my sales pitch.
Like we talked about it the other day, Jordan and I, briefly, and that is literally what the Marvels was. The Marvels was an unadulterated piece of garbage because it wasn't sent to anybody but young, impressionable women. It had nothing to do with moving the story along. It had nothing to do with creating the universe. It was simply there to girl power everything up, which it's like the girl Ghostbusters. Why are you alienating your entire base? Like, if you want to try and get those people and join the fiction, join the world, great.
But they had them. That's the problem.
Yeah.
They had the world. And, going to see phase 3 of the MCU was a quarterly event, because I think they were doing about 4 movies or 3 movies a year.
I think it was 3 a year, yeah.
Right? And everybody, you going? Yeah, I'm going this weekend. I'm going to the midnight show. Okay, don't say anything.
Yeah.
We can talk about it on Monday. Going back to the water cooler thing, they had everybody. And I swear there was not like when Iron Man snapped, you could hear a pin drop in that theater. Like and when Cap picked up the hammer,
oh my God,
you couldn't hear anything but the audience. You couldn't hear the movie anymore. But it was fun, right? That was acceptable. So they had literally everybody. Like, they passed the mom test. I always say when I'm talking to my wrestling friends, I'm like, yeah, I love this wrestler. You should be, world champ. I'm like, does he pass the mom test? What's that? Does your mom know who he is? No? Then he shouldn't be world champ. You need someone of that caliber. And Tony Stark, Captain America, the Hulk, they all started passing the mom test. They're like, oh yeah, I really like that irony guy. They would never get it right. They wouldn't know the lore, but they would recognize it. The Shield guy, he's my favorite. He's so nice. They had everybody. And why do you make that turn? Off of success, we're like, oh, let's turn down agenda field. And let's start going down there and starting to cast directors and cast writers in the name of progress and diversity and just your own personal agenda. Meanwhile, your agenda should have only ever been make good movies that everybody wants to see, because you had the formula. Like, you had it.
The first Black Panther was incredible. It was a great movie because nobody was pandering.
I beg to differ.
Well, but the character itself is a bit of a pander originally. But as far as it goes, there were only 2 white people in that movie.
Yeah, and they spent the time calling them all colonizers.
Agreed, which, the Wakandans should not call anyone colonizers because they never were colonized and they had the power to stop it and they did nothing. So they're worse than the colonizers. But My point was there's only 2 white guys in that first movie, and both of them happen to be in Lord of the Rings. So they are literally the Tolkien white guys.
It was a long way to go for that
It
joke.
was a long way for go for that joke, but I like it. But no, but as I said, I enjoyed the first Black Panther movie a lot because I thought it was really well done as far as, trying to bring in that bit of that agenda, but it was an organic way to bring in the agenda.
I
Because
mean,
it
but
should have been.
to also do Marvel, you still need to have Wakanda in there, right? Because of Wakanda, whether it was forced into Marvel comics or not, Wakanda is a big part of Marvel as a whole in the comics. We're talking about vibranium, and once you have Cap's shield in there, Wakanda's already tied in. It took them a while to get there, but yeah, I mean, I always thought of Black Panther was just Disney redoing the live action version of The Lion King. It was kind of the same tropes and all that. I enjoyed the movie though. I did enjoy it. I accepted it.
Hamlet?
Hamlet? Well, yeah, but that's free. That's part of the what's it called? What's the word?
Copyright. It's
Public
free,
domain.
Public
Thank
domain.
you. That's the word.
But
That's
then
the
you go
word.
and you look at something like Avatar, which is just Fern Gully in space, which is just Pocahontas.
There we go.
So,
yeah. Is Sigourney Weaver a Disney princess yet, or what?
that's a good question.
She should be. Should be honorary at least.
Yeah.
Her panties in Alien should be.
Yeah.
I was reading something with Cameron, and she refused to
Shave
or
trim.
and they were just coming out everywhere, and
Good
it
on her.
cost them thousands of dollars to digitally remove it.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, he referred to it as her minge. Her minge was crawling out.
That's the technical term for it. It has been that way for hundreds of years. Minge is a phrase from the 1600s. It's like a merkin, a fake pubic hair is called a merkin, and that also comes from the 1600s.
Ironically, that's what Jordan wears on his face. That's what
that is true. If he could grow a real beard, he might be handsome. But
it's never mind.
I don't know. There's 2 good-looking guys with goatees, and you with that whatever is on your face.
I like it. Okay, I got rid of my goatee.
At least it's not all long now. He had
it used to be. Yeah,
a couple months ago. He had it all long.
Yeah, I have the big beard when I can, but the wife gets pissed off, so I can't keep it.
He was looking like Gandont the Grey.
Oh, good Lord.
I'm so glad I always bring on old guys to pick on the younger talent and generation.
I'm only 10 years older than you.
If you bring any on, we'll be happy to get them too.
So back to our original topic.
Enough picking on Jordan.
Our actual question or topic is there a way to bring back the comic book industry? And I would dare say, moreover, the entertainment industry as a whole. Is there a way to rescue it? Is there a way to get the customers back buying the product?
I'm going to say no. And here's why. With the advent of both streaming services and 100-inch televisions with surround sound that you can pause the movie to go for a crap or go get a snack or get a new beer or whatever else it is, you don't need the movie theater experience anymore. And even like not the rich people who have their theater room, but most people have a 50 to 60-inch television in their screens now. They can sit a comfortable chair and do their thing. The only things that need to be seen in the theater are the giant blockbusters. And that's the only way to consume them how they're meant to be seen. So I'm talking Endgame. I'm talking Top Gun.
Yeah.
Top Gun Maverick, which is just Top Gun plus Star Wars. It's the same plot. Anyways.
A counterpoint, Barbie. Barbie had people flocking to the theater.
But that was subject matter over size. You can consume Barbie in just
Which is
the same way.
surprising, though.
Yeah, that's an anomaly, not a rule.
Right?
No.
Because it was pure pander, but it came out knowing that it was pander, right? Which also, I mean, it's Barbie. Is it because it's pandering, or is it because it passes the dad test, so to speak? Right? Everybody knows who Barbie is.
Well, but that's a good point, though, because pandering still works and will always work. And and this is the thing. It'll work to a certain degree because someone, Jordan, you and I both know, a few weeks before Madam Web came out, told me that we were playing cards at a restaurant nearby, and they have the TVs on, and this is probably 2 weeks before it came out, or maybe it was a week before it came out, and the trailer came up, and I just shook my head and I went, "Oh, that's gonna bomb hard." And a woman I know said, "What's that?" And I said, "Oh, it's the latest Marvel piece of crap. It's called Madam Web." And someone else said, "Oh, I really want to see that." Another woman said, "I really want to see that. I think it looks great." And I said, "Why does it look great?" And then she proceeded to try and tell me who Madam Web was. And look, I'm not a snob when it comes to it, but when
Sure,
it comes
let's hear
to
you out.
collecting, but you're not going to tell me your knowledge of Madam Web as a mid-50s woman in Canada, and you're going to explain a comic book character that you know based on a trailer you saw. But
Well,
I
now
digress.
you know how women feel when mansplain things.
Oh, no, it's fabulous. I think it's fantastic. I love it when people try and over-explain or explain to me things that I know. I think it's fantastic. I think it's a wonderful way for me to educate the hell out of them.
That's where the actually comes out.
Yeah, I'm like, well, let me mansplain to you what Madam Web actually is and what this is not.
Yeah.
And
this has nothing to do with Madam Web as far as I can tell.
right.
Other than the name.
And so here's the problem. Is I will ask this person the next time I see them if they've gone to see Madam Web. And I guarantee you I already know the answer. And that's the problem. And this is the problem that it's always been with this pandering BS is they claim, which I don't believe their claims in the least, but their claim is that they are trying to reach a broader audience. But if you're doing that,
broad.
yes, they're trying to reach a broad audience, an audience of broads. But if you're doing that at the expense of the people that have carried you on their backs through good times and bad for literal decades, then there is a deeper agenda and you're all lying.
Yeah.
And these ESGs, as they've come to coin the phrase, is what the culprit is. But that's a discussion for another time because it's ridiculous. And we'll probably get shadow banned, if not outright banned, just for mentioning the details of it. But my point is this woman, even though claiming to want to see it, I guarantee you hasn't seen it and won't see it, won't pay to see it. She may see it at some point, but she won't go out of her way and she won't pay to see it.
Or be excited to see it.
Right. Because if you were excited to see it,
You'd see it.
Like the rest of us, you'd have been lined up.
And
you'd have been the only person in line. But
I don't want to get into this. I don't. But that's the same reason why the women's and women's not tennis, because tennis is not the only. This is the one that's exception. But like women's soccer, women's basketball
WNBA.
stuff,
Oh, yeah.
WNBA. They're like, well, why aren't they making as much as the men? Why aren't you showing up to watch the game? Why do we have to watch their game? You're women, go watch the women.
And that's ultimately my point. If you are claiming that this is what you want, you have a responsibility to be one of the people that fosters and perpetuates your reality by being present and being opening your wallet and being one of the people that is consuming with your dollars, purchasing this product.
Well, that's where the Ghostbusters Answer the Call fell so flat. Not because
Did that even come out?
Oh, it did. And if you watch it and you divorce your brain from the fact that it's supposed to be a Ghostbusters movie, if you call it Ghost Hunters or anything else,
Ghost Squad,
Ghost Squad, it would have been a fine movie. It's not a great
Ghost
movie,
Maid
but it's
Service.
okay. But no, it's not even that. It's just that the director, who is Paul
Feig.
No, it's not Feig, is it? Maybe it is.
I don't know. I just know that.
Anyways,
I think he had something to do with the all female one, didn't he?
No, that was completely Universal. That's entirely different. But
I'm looking it up.
Yeah, Paul Feig.
Is it Paul Feig?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm thinking Kevin Feige. Sorry, no, Paul Feig. Yeah, the only thing I ever knew him from was one role he did in Ski Patrol back in the '90s, where he played the bumbling idiot that got the girl despite himself. He's made a career of taking movies that are made for men, like the Bachelor, not Bachelor Party, the
Bridesmaids.
The Hangover. He took The Hangover and remade it with women and came up with Bridesmaids.
Right.
And so that's what his thing is. He makes copies of men things with women, which would have been okay if it wasn't trying to be a Ghostbusters movie. But the problem was he came out before the movie came out because people were already starting to go, well, this isn't really a Ghostbusters movie. And he said to his crowd of people that were Ghostbusters fans for 30 years, if you don't go watch this movie, you're a piece of shit loser who lives in your parents' basement and you don't have a say. How do you alienate your entire fan base by saying, if you don't like this movie, you're a misogynistic piece of shit?
I've never understood this. I'm going to bully you into buying my product mentality.
Yeah,
that so many of them.
I don't get it.
It doesn't work with the guys with their CDs in Times Square that are now QR codes. It never worked on me then, and the idiots in the costumes that are, oh, you can't take my picture without paying me while you're standing in public in a ridiculous costume, or your butt's hanging out, or you're, the naked cowboy, or all these idiots. Like, you're not going to bully me into paying you. It's just not going to happen. You might be able to fool me into paying you at some point. Like, I did pay to see the original first Fast and Furious movie. I went and saw that shit. But that was back when I was seeing absolutely everything that came out. And when you could see absolutely everything that came out, as we're going back to our previous branch of this discussion. But now, with so much to consume, I choose not to consume stuff that I know, and I like bad stuff. I like my kids and I found this past Christmas season, we found Christmas movies on Tubi. And let me tell you, that is fascinating. That was such a great rabbit hole to go down. And I've rather either good or bad, I've passed on my love of all things bad to my kids. But when I say I love all things bad, I love things that are bad that are trying to be good.
Yeah.
I don't think that the Transformers movies or the Fast franchise movies are trying to be good. I think that they have tapped into what they know to be a money-making formula, and they don't. It's like, and you're old enough to know, it's like when Dukes of Hazzard was on the air, and Tom Wopat and what's his name?
Bo Schneider.
Yeah, but his real name, not D. Schneider.
Tom Schneider. Sorry, Tom Schneider.
Is it? No.
Yeah.
No, Tom Schneider was the radio guy. You're right. It's Schneider, but it's like, I gotta look it up because I can't believe I don't remember.
Keep talking. I got it. John Schneider.
John Schneider. Both of the two leads of the show boycotted, went on strike, I think is the actual thing that they did, because they were saying we're the number one show and our scripts are terrible. We're not providing good quality, and we're not given good quality by way of the scripts. So we're not putting out what our audience deserves. They're tuning in. They're choosing to look at us and spend their time with us. And we are not doing our best to provide them with the quality entertainment they deserve. So they went on strike. And then, of course, the studios famously brought in the cousins of the cousins.
Yep, I remember.
And Jordan, do you know anything about this? Or
No, I'm learning this for the first time. And I think that's fascinating that the two stars of the biggest shows decide to walk because they feel like they
took a stand like nobody else.
That's huge.
To my knowledge. And do you know the show Dukes of Hazzard?
Oh, I know the show.
You know because of the movies that they've put out with Johnny
I just know there was a bad flag on a car or no. I know the Dukes of Hazzard with the Daisy Duke shorts.
They didn't have a pride flag on the car.
I did like the fact they made fun of that during the very crappy movie by Broken Lizard, but yeah.
But Broken Lizard did do that movie. That's right.
That's why they were all in there. They reprised their roles from Super Trooper as the campus cops. And
I'm gonna rewatch that again.
You should actually watch Tacoma FD. It's the final season is up now on Crave.
Okay.
Tacoma FD is killer. It is just.
I'm a big fan of all things Broken Lizard. Chris, do you ever watch Broken Lizard stuff?
Yeah, I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm a fan. Like, I mean,
fair.
It's okay here and there. They've put out a couple of things that I've liked, but overall, it's not like something where if it's branded with their
you're jumping on it. Got it.
Yeah.
Tacoma FD actually isn't branded with it. It's just some of the guys from Broken Lizard that do it. It's basically Brooklyn Nine-Nine in a fire department. Is what they basically did.
Yeah, but to finish off, so Jordan, for your sake and for anybody of the 26 subscribers that are watching and may not know, this is late 70s, early 80s, and I don't remember exactly when. It might have been 79 when they went on strike. And me being a really young kid, Friday nights, this was the jam. You tuned in at 8 p.m. to watch the Dukes of Hazzard religiously. And then one week we tuned in and Bo and Luke were not Bo and Luke anymore. And they got two guys that looked like them, which was, even as a 7-year-old, was insulting to me. I'm like, what are you trying to pull? What shenanigans is going on here? And I didn't understand the bigger picture at the time, but I appreciated it when I got older and I knew of what was behind all of the change. And so Tom Wopat and John Schneider stood their ground and said, we want better scripts. And it wasn't, for them, it wasn't about, they didn't go on strike for more money. They didn't go on strike for more clout or any of the stuff that, more people do and have done over the years. They went on strike to produce a better product. And
that's unheard of and amazing.
It was 82, by the way.
Was it 82? Yeah.
82.
Season 5. Yeah.
Yeah. And they had the talent. Denver Pyle, what was why can't I Searle? What was Boss Hogg's name? Sorrel Brooks, I believe. I'm not looking it up.
Yeah, Sorrel Brook, you're right.
Yeah. Who was a really good actor. That role for him was such a goof, and he did it well. He knew it was a goof. He knew it was beneath him. But man, he was a Shakespearean trained actor, I believe, and did a lot of stage stuff. And he went into that and just goofed it up and did a phenomenal job. Like, this was the peak of popcorn entertainment. And the fact that these two guys, and maybe with the help of the rest of the cast, stood their ground and said, we need to be doing better. And we're willing to risk at the height of what could be our only shot at huge stardom. And they're in the pool of it at the time. You know, like picture Seinfeld in season 5 going, no, you know what? Like Larry David's like, you know, I don't know. I could come up with an
Friends,
analogy,
go with
but it
Friends.
would be stupid.
Well, Seinfeld walked when they were on top too, right?
He did, but he
No, but they
but he
left.
he he
Right.
finished it. He didn't do it for
It would be more
a
like
statement.
if Joey and Chandler said, you know, our scripts are shit. We're gonna not do it until, and they replaced Joey and Chandler with Bill and Fred.
And
Like,
I was
it
going to
just
use
didn't
Friends
work.
as a reference, but Friends famously took a stand to get equal payment across the cast.
Yes, that's right.
Oh, absolutely, and that was great. That part I understand. I'm just saying, like, it's the
Yeah.
same type of hype
Yeah. Yeah,
for
yes,
something
yes.
that Jordan would
Or
understand.
90210
You
even,
know,
like when they were doing mall tours and showing up and you know, teenage girls were creaming in their panties all over the nation and beyond. Like they were going overseas and people were going crazy. And if they had come out and said, "You know what? You guys now we're at the height of it. You got to spin off. This Melrose Place thing is taken off. We think the writing sucks and we either get better writing, you either pay the writers better." And again, I've long argued since I was a teenager that the key and cornerstone, and maybe what we're talking about in this silly little thing that we're doing, it all starts and ends with the writing. If you
yes.
don't have a good writing staff, if you don't have a good script, or just a singular writer, and it doesn't have to be a staff. If you don't have a good script, you have nothing. And there have been miracles pulled up where, you know, even the argument, if you believe it, that the 2008 Iron Man original movie didn't really have a script and they winged it. There have been things and improvs and whatever that you can pull a genie out of a bottle on you know, when the moon is aligned with the stars and, you know, things go right and you've got all the right people in the right places and whatever, you might be able to pull something off. But by and large, they are notoriously cheap at paying writing staff, and it's the crux of everything that you put out.
It's because they don't believe that the writers actually fill the seats, right? It comes down to, we were talking
Star
about
power.
the star power, what we were talking about earlier, but you were arguing that gone are the days are the superstars, the seat fillers.
Yeah.
You see what I did there?
Yeah.
Like, I could argue, like you said, Tom Cruise, seat filler. The Rock, seat filler. Tom Hanks. What's left?
But
Leo.
and
Leo?
I honestly thought with the success of someone like Quentin Tarantino, who was notably a writer director, I thought we would see a shift in that because the celebrity status seemed to extend to certain directors over the years. You know, you've got your, you know, you go way back. You've got your Frank Capra's and beyond, and you've got Hitchcock, and then you've got, you know, Francis Ford Coppola, and you've had a few of them, you know, one or two throughout the decades. Like you get a couple in a decade, and people are like, "Oh, I have to see that latest Hitchcock movie." They weren't talking about the latest Cary Grant movie. It was a Hitchcock movie, even though Cary Grant was the star. They knew it was a Hitchcock film, but it was very minimal when you compare it to the broader scope of, oh, were you going to see that new Mickey Rooney film or the new Alfred Hitchcock film? They still went to the star of the movie for the most part. So you had a few of them pocketed throughout time. But then when Tarantino came along, and even to a lesser degree, I think, Robert Rodriguez, even though I think his stuff is more well-rounded, but Tarantino got the bigger praise and had, I think, the bigger cult following. So I thought that we were going to see a shift in being able to have people en masse appreciate the storyteller as opposed to the cast of characters, as opposed to the people, you know, in the cast. And I thought that was going to become the draw going forward. But aside from him and a few others, it hasn't really, you still do get the people that say, I have to go see that new Spielberg movie. Like Jurassic Park was not, what's his name? Sam
Neill.
Yeah.
Or
It wasn't,
Jeff Goldblum.
it wasn't their picture. It was definitely a Spielberg picture.
However, now the last few Jurassic Worlds are most definitely a Chris Pratt vehicle. What we're talking about are vehicles.
Right.
And everyone says, it's if you say it's an actor movie, it's a vehicle. It's their vehicle to drive to stardom or whatever thing you want to call it. Directors being celebrities is not new, but it is considerably rarer than
It
celebrities.
is a very small box in the bigger scope of things, yes.
And so if you look at Die Hard, Bruce Willis himself said it during his roast. Don't care if it's a Christmas movie, don't care if it's not a Christmas movie. What it is a Bruce Willis movie. And he made a career out of that character. Doesn't matter. Like, I'm not even talking about John McClane. I mean, everything he does, is Bruce Willis. Everything Tom Cruise does, he is Tom Cruise.
Arnold Stallone.
Those guys, those are just vehicles.
Yep.
Whatever movie they're in is a vehicle. And I think the pinnacle of that is the Expendables. That's literally a vehicle for every washed up action star.
But you bring up a sort of a juxtaposition or maybe a paradigm, because Stallone, famously, his first big hit was something he wrote.
Yep.
So, it's a weird situation, and he's written a lot and directed quite a bit. And so again, he's someone that, okay, he transverses all the big roles, the big parts in the filmmaking process. But and I would have thought that based on his success, again, that would have lent to the bigger scope of celebrating the capable storyteller, the person either capable of taking an existing story, making it a screen presentation, and then directing it and maybe even starring in it. And again, Tarantino, like him or hate him or meh, he's still able to do that and be recognized. Like, no Tarantino movie has ever, even Reservoir Dogs, it was never labeled with a celebrity or a cast member in mind. It was his first hit, albeit a ripoff of another movie or a couple of other movies. It was still noted as this up-and-coming writer-director.
Right.
And I wish that people actually appreciated and celebrated the intellectual part of visual storytelling, which is the writing and the actual putting together of the movie. If people knew how hard it was to put together an actual feature film, I think they would have much more respect.
Yeah, Chris and I have both worked on features, and it's not an easy process. It takes
a lot of moving parts
and hundreds of people, a lot of moving parts. It's not something you just crank out in your backyard. But here's the thing that I was going to say, Chris, that you've brought up now. There aren't many vehicles left because they're now, the writing may be crap, but they're still character driven, and the characters are bigger than the stars that play them. If you want to take a look at Avengers or even Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr., it's not a Robert Downey Jr. movie, it's an Iron Man movie. His character is bigger than the star.
Yeah, I've heard this position recently from a few different places too. Yeah, is that like you're saying, the characters have become the actual draw, which, you know what, isn't necessarily a bad thing, because that
no, I'm not saying that.
Writing, right? Like the characters are the written component,
and that goes into what Marcus said a little bit ago about Bruce Willis. Die Hard is a Bruce Willis movie. Spider-Man is a Spider-Man comic. We're going to read a Spider-Man comic because of Spider-Man, because of Wolverine, because of Batman.
Okay, sorry, I don't know where you're going, but let me just,
okay,
and I'm not going to take over here.
No worries.
But if you talk to any comic book fan, Spider-Man is not Spider-Man. It's
That's
Steve
exactly-
Ditko and Stan Lee. Right? You still go back to, I know who created that. I know who brought it to us.
Right, but yes, but it's still Peter Parker's voice. Sorry, it's Stan Lee's and Ditko's voice, but Peter Parker and Spider-Man have a certain character traits that need to stay in. And what we've seen in the past 2 decades is shifts in the characters, where as a longtime Spider-Man fan, right? I always go to Brand New Day for this because it's the worst piece of trash ever written for Spider-Man. He made a deal with the devil. Peter Parker would not have made a deal with the devil.
Right.
Doesn't make sense. I don't care if Stan Lee praised it. I don't. You can rape me in the comments. You can R-word me in the comments below.
And Captain
Parker-
America never was a Hydra agent. You can
That's right.
You can roll that comic up and shove it sideways where the sun don't shine.
Absolutely.
This
That
is
one
where
pissed me off,
right.
too.
This is where people
But-
walk away and never return.
Right.
Those are pivotal moments, and that's because they are taking the voice, or it's no longer a Bruce Willis movie.
The essence, you're destroying the essence of why it's lasted for generations.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you take a character that's been around for 70 years and then do something that's so far out of character, it hurts. The only good thing about that little quick arc of Cap being a Hydra agent was it gave us that elevator scene in Endgame, which I adored that elevator scene.
Oh, it was great.
That was so amazing, but it would never have happened without that particular comic. But my point was, sorry, my thing was, if you've got I'm going to go to Star Trek again because I'm sort of equal parts Trek and Wars. I do both. My wife will tell you, I sat through the first Star Trek movie, like the Chris Pine one, Kelvin timeline, and I was agitated. I was angry.
Yep.
I was like, what the fuck is this? This is not right. What is going on? This is so stupid. That's not how they did that. I was full nerd rage.
As you should have been.
Until I hit Spock on the ice planet and he went, oh, this is an alternate timeline. I went, oh, alternate timeline. Okay, I'm good. And instantly I could enjoy the movie. But when everything was wrong without that explanation of an alternate timeline, I was like physically angry. And I'm muttering. I'm like, this isn't fucking right. What is bullshit? Why would they do this? Why are they changing these things? Then I got the explanation, and that Kelvin timeline is off to the side. I get it. That's perfectly fine. Same thing with the Ghostbusters girls. As long as that's an alternate timeline and not in canon, then I'm fine. I don't care about it anymore.
Yeah, but that's a weak. It's a weak argument, not yours. It's a weak argument on their part to be able to just continue to use existing IP to make money.
Oh, absolutely, but they don't have the Doctor Who mechanic where they can just replace the actor and nobody says
no.
boo
You're
about
right,
it.
and I've argued for a long time because I'm an old school Doctor Who fan from way back when you used to watch it on TV Ontario and you'd see half-hour episodes and you'd only ever, because it wasn't in the TV guide, and you'd only ever catch episode 2 of 4 and you go, I don't know what the hell happened in Genesis of the Daleks now because I only saw one of the episodes and they don't run them consecutively on weeknights. It's random and I don't know what, but you're a dick. I'll get you for that.
Eat a dick, Jordan.
Yeah. But I've made that argument where I thought that was some of the most, and again, even when they brought Doctor Who back, I think that they had some brilliant writing. Even some of the bad episodes were really good. And I don't think all rebooting is necessarily bad. And I don't think the need to make money in an industry that needs money to survive is bad. But what I do think is bad is grabbing your meaty paws and sinking your hooks into every goddamn thing, slapping a brand on it, buying up all the, and I don't know if you guys saw this, but in the Deadpool 3 trailer, did you notice that they're fighting in front of crashed down 20th Century Fox logo?
I love that. I love it.
There's a lot of Easter eggs in that
Yeah.
thing. That's an entire podcast on its own.
Yeah.
So, but my point is, yeah, they didn't have the ability to regenerate a character, so they had to come up with something. And I have not liked, I hated at the time J.J. Abrams. So I went to that Star Trek movie begrudgingly, and I actually walked out going, it's the only way that they could really do it, because I haven't been satisfied with any of the Star Trek iterations going forward since Next Generation. So, in order to bring back the characters that we grew up loving, that people loved enough to campaign for, to start conventions that drew the attention back to it and said, we need this to continue because we were left wanting. And I felt like the only way they could have achieved that is some sort of time shift or dimensional shift or whatever.
Yeah.
So I thought, and again, I cannot stand J.J. Abrams. I think he is an absolute hack. I think anyone that watched Lost from beginning to end is a moron. And I mentioned that I hate J.J. Abrams and that I think he's a hack. His whole concept, and he gleefully talks about it, about the mystery box. Yeah, we get it. You have no fucking payoff. You come up with things that can't be paid off. And then you claim that, oh, don't worry, they're not all dead.
I would just like him to turn the goddamn lens flare generator
Yeah,
off.
and suppose
Like, that's got to stop. The lens flare thing is
It's ridiculous.
overdone. We got to stop. They actually did that in How It Should Have Ended.
yeah.
They went, "Hey, can we turn that off? Oh wow, this is so much better. It's much easier
Oh look,
to
I
work
can
now."
see the
Thanks
fucking
a lot.
film now.
Yeah, exactly.
But ultimately, my point is I actually gave him credit for that one, because I was like, okay, it's the only way they could have carried on these characters, by putting new actors, young actors, in the place of the original creators.
Iconic characters, right? Like
Iconic characters because of the way they were portrayed by
That's
the
it. By the
talent
actors.
that was.
Yeah.
Love him or hate him, but William Shatner brought Kirk to life to be who Kirk is. And DeForest Kelly, Bones would not be Bones. And again, I herald the Canadian soldier of James Doohan. Like, that man himself, what he brought to that part, his entire life. If you don't know the history of that man, do yourself a favor. When we're done here, go on YouTube and punch up James Doohan's story or Scotty from Star Trek story. Look up some of the stuff about how he fought in the war, how he got shot 3 times in one finger. So his finger got amputated, and he hid it in every possible way he could throughout his run on Star Trek. And because he didn't want it to draw attention. And just the things that he's responsible for, and the overall good nature of that man, and what he brought to the set, and and he's no fan of Shatner either.
And he was a sweet guy. I met him at a Toronto Trek one year.
That's
He
awesome.
was really lovely.
Yeah, I've heard
so
that.
was everybody was wonderful that I've met, with 2 exceptions. One being Bill Shatner, he's an arrogant prick, and the other one being Walter Koenig, and he was an absolute dickhead.
That's interesting.
The only thing I gave
got that
him
vibe
credit
from him just on interviews and stuff, but it's interesting.
The only thing I give him credit for, and this is slightly apocryphal because I've heard a couple different versions of the story, but I know someone who was actually there in the States at a convention, and Michael Dorn had walked into the dealer's room, and some little 5-year-old kid runs up and goes, "Mr. Worf, can I have your autograph, please?" And he says, "Oh, they'll be at the autograph table tomorrow. I'm just enjoying my time." And Walter Koenig heard this, basically grabbed him by the ear and dragged him out of the room, sat him down and went, "Look, you arrogant little prick. These kids are going to be paying your salary for the rest of your life. I don't give a shit if an adult comes up to you and you say, 'Come to you tomorrow.' If a kid asks you for anything, you give him what he fucking wants, and don't ever let me hear about this again." And he went, "Yes, sir." And he went out and did, shook hands with the kid, whatever. And that's the rule with the Star Trek guys. Kids, free pass. Adults, okay, you're crossing the line, Back up. We'll see you tomorrow at the autograph line or whatever. But kids want to see them. Kids can see them. And that's the only thing I will give Walter Koenig for that, because I had to deal with him on a convention level where I was the convention chair, and he was an absolute prick the whole time. Oh, and Marita Sirtis was always a bit of a bitch too, but that's most of the rest of them are great. Sorry,
I appreciate that. That's great insight.
Love stories like that.
Oh, I got lots of those.
Right? Yeah. Should we wrap this up? What do we do?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't solve anything. The world keeps spinning uncontrollably.
And I thought we solved it. We decided to let the Palestinians take over Israel. We did say that.
Right.
Magneto's going to be casted by Ferris Bueller, who has AIDS.
Yeah, the ghost of Walter Koenig's son is coming after Marcus.
That's right. Yeah. And what it comes down to is keeping the voice of the characters that you originally fell in love with, and writing is a huge part of it. And
the only way to save this industry is to start letting the writers get better. And I mean that in the sense of, like, you have source material, use it. Like, we want story-driven characters. One of my favorite MCU is Captain America, the First Avenger, because the writing on it is so damn good. And I also am a sucker for World War II stuff, but that's just because I'm old and I don't smoke weed.
Character-driven, right? I mean,
yeah, it's all character. And now it's all ideology, and it's not lame.
I had an argument with a friend the other day, and they were making fun of the Halo nerds because they're hating on the show because he took his mask off.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I understand where they're coming from. I'm not a big Halo guy, but I get it. They've never seen Master Chief's face, and Master Chief's been around for 20-something years. Why did they have to reveal his face? My buddy said, well, that's character development. I said, removing a mask and seeing a face is not character development, sir.
It's like Mandalorian.
Right? Like, you can do so much more by not revealing his face, because, again, going back to Stan Lee, and I said this to him, Peter Parker wears a full mask because anybody can be Spider-Man. And that's what everybody loved about Master Chief, is that anybody could be behind that mask. And there's a lot of lore that they could have used, because he was saying, well, there's not much story in the games. I'm like, but there's comics, there's books, there's so much they could have pulled from for source material. And
don't
to
even
just
start me with that. Oh my God.
Remove the mask, what, episode 2 or end of the first episode, I think it was. It's like, yes, of course your die-hard Halo fans are gonna be pissed. Like, if you wanted to remove his mask so bad, you could have teased it. You could have done some great cinematography of him taking off the mask and something, the camera behind his head, or, something's blocking him, or, focusing on another character in the screen while he's talking. Like, Destro, we've never seen his face. We've never seen Cobra Commander's face. We've never seen Dr. Claw's face. We don't need to see someone's face, and that's not character development. People losing what character development really is.
I bitched about this on one of our earlier episodes. And I don't know whether it's generational or not. I don't want to throw an entire generation under the bus as easy as that seems to be these days.
You can go from after millennials, you can throw them under the bus. I'm fine with that.
But I believe that it's a lack of understanding of what good writing is. Either that, or it's a willful ignorance and dismissal of it. Because look at what they've done to Doctor Who. Look at what they've done to, as you point out, Master Chief. I was going to bring
that up, yeah.
Mandalorian doesn't have a history, but you established a set of facts.
A mythos?
Yeah, a mythos is a better way to put it. You established that episode 1 only to go against it time and again, not just once, not just to make a point, You did it repeatedly. And again, I understand the behind the scenes that there are contract reasons and you have uptight, prissy little bitches that are stars of these shows that they need to have their face
I need
shown.
my face out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
X amount of minutes.
Look, there's a reason everyone knew that Steve Rogers was Captain America in the movies. It's not for good storytelling. It's because it was written into Chris Evans's contract somewhere along the lines that he needs a certain amount of his face being in those movies. Because otherwise, in the comic books, it wasn't a well-known fact that Steve Rogers was Captain America. And so what you've got, and again, we could go down the Doctor Who path because that is a severe desecration of a long-standing IP that just is the most egregious example that I can come up with. But you take these things, and part of what makes, and Marcus, you weren't here for this, so I'm gonna spill this out as if it's new. You take an existing intellectual property and it is handed to, or whether you had to work to get there, I don't care, but it's given to a person or a team to continue on, to run with the torch. You're in a relay race. And you've been given the baton and you're expected to carry it on. And maybe you add new flair. Maybe you add new intricacies. You add new picadillos, insight, whatever. But you're supposed to carry on with the core tenets of what the character is, what the story arc is, and everything like that. So Doctor Who is, they changed it after the very first season when they found out that
William Hartnell.
Yeah, I always forget which one, whether it was Troft. I don't know why I mix up their names, Trofton and Hartnell. But you had Hartnell, who they hired on as an old man because when the show was conceived, they said this seems like a stuffy old British kind of dude that would fit this part. We're calling him a Time Lord. You need some sort of dowager kind of.
It was also established as a children's show.
Right.
Like it's a children's show. That's what everybody seems to forget. It's the same thing with
I
Star
don't
Wars.
think that matters though. I don't think that's relevant because you're dictating who your audience is going to be, right? Like who catches on to it is more important to me than what your intent was. Because if you're able to reach an audience that you didn't intend, then you've got a good product. You've got something that people want to buy.
It's bonus.
Absolutely. My point was, though, it was designed to hit kids originally, which is why they wanted an older man so it would have the gravitas. It was also designed as a somewhat historical thing. Like they were supposed to be talking about history stuff.
It was a way to
trick
work
kids into
work.
learning.
Yeah, exactly. Work in historical elements, right? But then he didn't want to carry on. So they found a way to write into the character that why he changed. Yeah. And to me, that's a brilliant workaround. It's like and having worked on film sets, it's as simple as if your set manager can't come up with a certain size set to achieve what you're doing. It's the cinematographer's or the camera person's job to figure out an angle and a framing to cheat that.
Yep.
So I think that's all that is in the writing of it is they found a way that they had a successful show and they found a way to carry it on. What they did going forward was build on the mystery of the character.
Yeah.
And ultimately, when they brought it back in 2005 after a 9-year
hiatus.
Well, 9 if you want to count the 96 shitty movie that they handed off to the American-Canadian team.
Which again, at the time I loved because there was nothing going on with Doctor Who.
Back to
now
my lightsaber argument, right?
Go, this is freaking horrible, but still.
Yeah.
And Paul McGann got screwed.
Yeah.
Like he really got screwed, but he did a ton of the radio dramas, so he's okay for that.
Yeah,
Anyways,
he did well.
He's actually the longest running Doctor Who.
That's what they say, yeah.
Anyway, continue.
But when they brought it back in 2005, what they did was they added another element, which again, you hope that the people that are getting handed the baton run hard, but run in the right direction.
Yeah.
So change is okay. And you could argue it depends on what you consider the right direction and arguments could be made. But making the retconning the entire lore by making him a black woman originally is just like, that's not running in the right direction. Running in the right direction is going, okay, we know the story. People that knew the show know the story of the Time Lord in the blue box.
Yep.
What can we add to that to bring a new audience? What element? Oh, he's now the last of the Time Lords, and we don't know why initially. And there's some drama to get to that point. You don't just throw it out in episode 1.
Yep.
Why he's the you throw it out that he's the last of the Time Lords, but you don't throw out why. And that is good writing. Why? Because it's mystery, it's intrigue. We don't want to be told and shown everything up front. We want to work for it. We want to sit through. Like, if you're told everything in one episode, what's the point in tuning in for the next episode?
Right.
Are you actually going to be brought new information every single episode? And at what point does that well run dry? You can't, like, if you were that great of a writer, you wouldn't be working on Doctor Who. You'd be working in multi-$100 million box office hits in Hollywood.
This will spark an entirely new hour of podcast if you want to go down Doctor Who road.
No, I know.
This is big time.
But I'm using Doctor Who
Absolutely.
as my point in that it seems like an entire generation has forgotten, or were never told, what the point of good drama and good storytelling is, and that is mystery and intrigue. And if you're throwing it all away, and if in Act 1 of The Wizard of Oz, someone walked up to Dorothy and went, well, I guess not Act 1, it would have been Act 2, because Act 1 she's on the farm.
Right.
In Act 2, if when they said, well, follow the yellow brick road, and when you get to the end of it, there's going to be a dude, don't believe the big smoke and mirrors, there's a dude behind the curtain, just go straight to him.
Yeah.
You don't need the rest of Act 2 or Act 3. The movie's over. It's pointless, because you've spoiled the entire point of her entire journey.
Yeah. Or even in Act 1, you could use the Act 1 point is, having all those characters in the beginning of the movie right away, and then they show up in her dream. They could have just said, you're going to have a dream tonight, and we're all going to be in it. And it's just one big dream. Here's the end of the movie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no journey.
Yeah, or if the guy one of the farmhands working the pig pen said,
Yeah.
Oh, she fell? Let's slip her some MDMA.
Let's give her some drugs and she'll sleep it off. It'll be fine.
Right?
Yeah.
But this whole thing of we need to pull the veil off as soon as possible and reveal.
Wolverine, Joker, like ruined almost, right?
Yeah.
Like what good came out of Wolverine Origins? That we got to learn that they're brothers with Sabretooth, maybe? Is that what we got to learn?
Is that actual canon now? Is
Yeah,
that in the books?
Yeah, Howlett. They're both the Howlett brothers. So, I mean, maybe that's the best thing to come out of it. But other than that, like, did we need to learn that Logan's name is James Howlett?
That's so less cool than
Logan, right?
And my son's name is James, but man, he would have been a cooler kid if I was allowed to name him Logan.
Yeah, I like, and the stuff with the Joker and just how there's a million different Jokers now, and it's Joker is now just a mantle. Like it just
and then again, back to the thing where you have normies, let's call them.
Yeah,
you have normies telling you the backstory of the Joker is he fell in a vat of acid, and you want to just smack them upside the head with the killing joke and go, look, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's literally the joke. Yeah.
Well, I assume you saw the 60th, Chris?
No, I refuse to watch any more Doctor Who beyond. I tried when they switched to Jodie Whittaker, and
that whole thing was like just a nightmare.
But in my defense, I was checked out before they switched to Jodie Whittaker. I liked the last episode with Capaldi, but they were already going this way with mid Capaldi run, and
Yep.
even when they brought Capaldi in, I was like, well, wait a minute. He's already played 2 characters in the Doctor Who universe, and now you want to make him the lead character. That seems odd to me.
What they actually brought, they did kind of explain that a little bit, but
Yeah, but
no, my
it's-
point was I saw the 60th because I'm still a diehard, so I still haven't watched the Whitaker stuff, but I am a diehard, so I was looking forward to the 60th, and the 60th was okay, but the Christmas episode, you saw Disney's fingerprints all over everything, and it just right now.
I would say you saw BlackRock's fingerprints all over it, but yes.
Well, no, because Disney Plus put money into it. So
no, I know, but
so
who owns Disney is BlackRock,
right? But the CGI was beautiful, like it was really well done, and I'm like, that's not what I want in Doctor Who. Like the CGI doesn't. You had a nice job, like the Baker. The CGI was beautiful. Everything was seamless. I'm like, well, they've ruined it. Like they've screwed it up.
Yeah, the charm is gone.
Yeah. I have a story, and I will try and get this quick because we do need to get out of here. You being a Doctor Who fan, you know about Daleks.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about 70s, 80s Daleks, not current Daleks.
Right.
If you had to get away from a Dalek, what did you do?
Go upstairs.
Correct. There was a woman, I was doing a show, and she was from Britain. She was doing a PowerPoint about something about geriatrics in Britain. And she had a slide that had a Dalek on the top, a set of stairs going down, and people at the bottom going, "Oh, that was easier than I thought it would be." Again,
Right.
It's funny.
Yeah.
And I said to her, that's a really clever slide, but maybe 5 people entirely in this room are going to know that joke. And she goes, "What are you talking about? Doctor Who's universal." I said, "No, it's really not. Like 5 people tops,
Right.
not including me." And then when she pulled the slide up, she goes, "Okay, before I explain the slide, how many people get this joke?" And literally 5 people in a room full of 150 people put their hands up. It was like, holy crap, Marcus, you were right. And then she explained it because her big thing was Daleks were terrifying back in the day.
Right.
They still try to make them terrifying now, but they're just, they're not.
Yeah, because again, they remove the mystery and everything, and you could argue that was even before all the woke bullshit. But
oh no, absolutely. Well, Doctor Who's always been a little woke or a little progressive, but
yeah,
no. My thing is just one. It's one more thing that Disney's fucked up by touching it.
Yep.
Jordan left.
Yeah. I think he fell in the deep end or something.
Yeah, I actually have to get moving here soon too. My wife's already poked her head in and said we got to go because we weren't expecting to be here for 2 hours.
I did not expect that talk that long, but that's okay. That was good. In conclusion, I had fun.
Yeah, it was a good time. I enjoyed the discussion.
We'll do this around same time next week.
Sounds good to me.
See what I can do. Look forward
Ciao
to it.
for now. Thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. And we'll do next week's topic coming up shortly.
All right.
Ciao for now.